Hello and welcome to the Misinformation Podcast. My name's Z, aka the Reluctant Accountant, and let's get into it. So today I just wanted to follow on a little bit from last week's episode when I was talking about kind of US politics and US election. And this isn't really about the election itself, but more about something that's come and been highlighted after the fallout from the election. So you may or may not be aware that if you've been living under a rock, you probably don't know, but Donald Trump has been re-elected as the next US president. And one of the big campaigns that the Democrats were running on was this idea of women's reproductive health and healthcare, essentially women's healthcare. And this has been a big issue in the US since the repealment of Roe v. Wade, which kind of effectively gave US women the right to seek an abortion if they wanted to, among other things. And what's happened is that's been decided that can be decided at a state level. So rather than it being federally protected, at a state level, different states can decide whether or not they allow women within their state to get abortions. Also, there are, various states that are imposing restrictions, saying to women that you can't even travel somewhere else to go and get it. If you're found to do that, you'll be held criminally responsible, and you could be imprisoned for that. So that has been a big big policy on the Democrat side. And obviously with the election of Trump to presidency and the Republican Party, many women have been, thoroughly disappointed and scared and by this turnout, by this result and this outcome. And so one of the things that has been going around on social media that I thought was kind of interesting and we'll dive into now was this cry, this call to arms is a bit dramatic, but this cry from women to join the 4B movement. And I'm not laughing because it's funny, I'm laughing because when I saw 4B, I was like, what, they want Afro hair? Okay, so that was the wrong page. I was completely on the wrong page with that. And clearly I don't read enough or whatever. I live in a cocoon. But I was seeing 4B everywhere and I was like, 4B, what are we talking about here? So I thought for today's episode, I'd kind of run through, just in case you'd come across this as well and you were equally confused and, what 4B, what Afro hair has got to do with anything, but it isn't about that. And so I'm going to explain, because I did my research, and I'm sure if, I'm wrong, you can let me know, but this is what I found out of the 4B movement. And I'll kind of sum up at the end, whether just my thoughts on this. Okay. What is the 4B movement? Let's take a little bit of a deep dive. Let's go and have a look. The 4B movement is a South Korean feminist movement that was born in response to the position that women in South Korea have found themselves. And essentially it is a movement that rejects what they see as the elements, the 4 key elements especially, that are traditionally tied to like women's roles in South Korean society in particular, but society in general. And so those 4 things were: you were to reject marriage, to reject childbirth, no dating, and no heterosexual sex. And the point was, these principles were there to encourage women to decenter men and reject like the pressures to conform to gender expectations. Now, I'm going to get into why did the 4B movement start, but what was interesting when I was looking up, and it was, this idea to decenter men, which I'm not against, by the way. I do think that's a good thing. And I also think it's a good thing for men to kind of decenter women. And when I say that, it's because sometimes you can have men that often find their identity off of what a woman is. So like, it's like, I don't do that because women do that. And I was just like, just find yourself for yourself. But anyway, I digress. So I'm laughing because I saw something on Twitter, which I just call Twitter, so we're just gonna have to run with that. I'm not saying X, it's stupid. On Twitter, and this woman had said that she's in a group on Facebook, and she spoke about like the 4B movement or whatever, and then she said, yeah, no, that's not gonna work over here. These people center men like crazy. And this was an American woman, by the way, but I just thought it just made me chuckle, where it was like, oh, we can be hold on a minute, but we're not too radical. We're like radical, not radical. Anyway, let's get into it. So why did the 4B movement start? So it emerged in South Korea in response to pervasive gender inequality. There's an intense like societal pressure on women over there. And there was also these like growing gender-based violence that they were suffering. So essentially the women came together and they wanted to, well, many women, obviously it's not all women, but women came together and they wanted something to be able to kind of fight back in their own way. And so at the moment, South Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the entire world. And a lot of people are attributing that to the societal pressure that's placed on women to kind of be homemakers and caregivers, etc., which they are rejecting. So the pressure has created this kind of cultural environment in which many women feel burdened by traditional expectations. So the 4B movement is offering this like radical alternative. So one pivotal incident that fueled the movement could be traced back to what occurred in 2023. It occurred last year, and a woman was tragically murdered in a Seoul subway by, I think it was the subway bathroom, and it was by a stalker who had basically harassed her for refusing his advances. So this was a crime that really like intensified the discussions among women around the whole 4B movement as like this means of an escape, like an escape from this unwanted attention from men and from just generally the societal pressure that they were feeling to engage in relationships where their safety was not being prioritized, nor was their autonomy. Thinking about the key principles of this movement, because I do want to be able to offer you some information. And again, I just want to put in here because just as an aside, I have people coming to me and they're like, I'm saying coming to me, they're writing comments and stuff. And sometimes they'll be like, well, you just don't go far enough. Honey, baby, friend, homie, lover. I thought I'd go for everything. I just want to say we need to learn to do research. We need to learn to go and take information and understand the information that's been given and apply critical thought to it, but also go and seek out information and opinions from those that disagree with us. I make podcast episodes that are between 20 to 30 minutes long, right? Sometimes they're even shorter than that, and sometimes a little bit longer. But by no means is this supposed to be a comprehensive study of any subject matter. So please just take this as a spark for which to go forth into the world and fill your brain with more information that maybe contradicts mine and is better articulated and everything. But it's getting a bit boring when people are like, well, you just haven't gone far enough. No, I haven't. I have other things to do. But thank you for being here. I appreciate everybody, even the comments that say I don't do enough. Thank you. The societal pressure is immense. Anyway, let me get back to it. So this 4B movement, as I said, it had kind of four, I guess it's why it's 4Bs. And so the 4B thing, as I said, has nothing to do with hair. The words for the like principles in Korean they begin with a B. I'm going to try and very much fail to pronounce them, but I will, if you are watching this on YouTube, or I will put the words up so you can see what I've been really poorly pronouncing. So the 4B principles, key principles and philosophies. So number 1, no marriage. That is bihon. That's how I'm saying it. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. Bihon. So they're saying that avoiding marriage eliminates the societal pressure on women to conform to traditional gender roles. So for many 4B followers, marriage represents a form of gendered labor, often disproportionately affecting women's economic and social freedoms. Number 2, no childbirth. Bichulsan. I'm going to say that's what that says. Bichulsan. Okay. So Bichulsan, they believe that by rejecting the expectation of motherhood, the movement frees women from the assumption that their ultimate role is just to bear children and raise them. South Korean feminists often point out that the country's low birth rate is partially due to a lack of support for working mothers, making childbirth an increasingly unattractive option. Number 3, this is where it's going to get techie. No dating. Bione. Okay, so the movement promotes the idea that dating, as traditionally practiced, often results in a power imbalance and pressures women to prioritize men's needs. By abstaining from dating, 4B followers reclaim their time and their energy. Oh, I'd love a bit of time and energy. And the 4th B, no sex with men, bisexu. I think that's bisexu. I think I pronounced that really well. You know what, let me live in my delusion. So, bisexu. This principle challenges the societal expectation that women's sexuality should revolve around male pleasure. By opting out of heterosexual relationships, women in the 4B movement assert control over their bodies and reject the notion that intimacy must include men. So, back to the US. Let's fly back because all roads tend to lead back there. Why has the 4B movement resonated in the US now? I can hear you crying, shouting, Z. Savannah, slow down, okay? So, well, with Trump's re-election, obviously this is why the 4B movement has gained traction among American women. And as I mentioned at the top of the episode, there have been real fairs around women's rights and women's reproductive health. So women are kind of feeling, increasingly disenfranchised by these conservative policies. Not all women, because, 51% of white women did vote for Trump, but a large proportion of women are feeling that way. So for some women, this 4B movement represents a form of resistance and empowerment. And it kind of offers this path to prioritize self-preservation over the traditional relationship roles. So women in the US are doing things like they're sharing their stories on TikTok, or they are trying to explain how the 4Me movement and the rejection of traditional relationships aligns with their frustration over recent political events. Here's where I'm going to get a little bit conspiracy theorist, right? Because this is very interesting to me. We have seen a rise of trad wife content on social media. And it's so interesting how this discourse in certain circles has exalted this trad wife aesthetic. And I'm going to call it as an aesthetic for a very real reason, to the thing to aspire to. And I remember I saw a clip from a woman who I'm assuming was going to vote for Donald Trump. And she didn't look like a trad wife. She wasn't dressed like my expectation. And she was talking about she wants to have, one baby in her belly and one on her arm and, loads of babies run behind her, and she wants to live on a farm and all of these things. And it's just been so interesting with the promotion of this trad wife content and this romanticizing of that, and seeing it as a very much, if you either have a trad wife, you become a traditional wife, or you're this raging feminist, which is blue head feminist over here. And so we need to reject feminism because I want to just get pregnant and raise children. Sorry. Anyway, no. Because here's the thing, right? The irony is that people, from my understanding of feminism, is that they want you to be a trad wife if you want to be a trad wife. So if you are not that, you have surely that we have this rise of all this content on social media showing that that's available. If you wanted to go and do it, why would you not go and do it? No one's stopping you from doing that. The interesting thing about this is they are aspiring to a world or a life that doesn't really exist for most people, because the content that you are seeing, the reason that looks so appealing is not because those women don't have to go to work. The reason they don't have to go to work is because they have money. The content that is up the top, you're not seeing those people that are really struggling, that don't have enough money to live off and whatever, saying, oh, this is the way. The trad wife content and that life that you're aspiring to, you don't want to be a trad wife. You want to be rich. That's what you want to do. And then you're conflating this as some sort of feminist issue, that their feminism is holding you back from doing that. Actually, feminism isn't. They're saying that you can do that, but you don't get to force everybody else to do it. Although Apparently now maybe they're going to. But I just found this really interesting as well. There's been this rise, this kind of, and I wouldn't put it against, given what we know about REDMAP and, you know, the long game that's played, I wouldn't put it against, you know, this being something more like nefarious, where this content is coming to the top and it's not reflecting realities at all. Because I'll say this, I'm old enough to remember, you know, being younger and women not having a lot of the rights that we take for granted now. Like, or just speaking about having conversations with my mum when I was young, where she was talking about in her lifetime, the things that women couldn't do, that women now can do, that we just take for granted as part and parcel of life, right? And so this idea that all these people were just really happy when they couldn't go to work, or really happy when they were, the idea that they couldn't go to work is nonsense. The point was that women were working, they just weren't being paid for it, and their work was continuous, right? Anyway, so can we stop pretending that the life we aspire to is because we want to be trad wives, and actually the life you aspire to is a one of comfort, and you want to be rich, and that's where your issue is. So your fight is with capitalism. Like, anyway, I digress. So we have this 4B movement coming out, and, you know, in the US they're talking about, well, we need this 4B movement because Trump is in power, yada yada yada. So what then is interesting is people may think this is a new concept and a new idea to have, you know, let's get together and do something. But there have been other things. So contextually, you know, obviously there was the global rise in 2017, I think it was, of the Me Too movement, which highlighted the prevalence of sexual harassment and assault. And, you know, it helped to kind of reveal a lot of the protections that weren't in place for people at an institutional and social level, and how they enabled the abuse as well. So there's that. But what was interesting, like, for me, what a good thing would be the looking up the Iceland women's strike. So if you don't know, I'm just going to briefly tell you. In 1975, in Iceland, women decided to go on strike to demand gender equality. So this was something that was pivotal and really changed the landscape in Iceland. And when I say they went on strike, they did nothing. They did no childcare. They were not doing any work. They literally withdrew their labor completely from everything, from the home, from the workplace and whatever. And men got the shock of their lives, and society got the shock of their lives, and straightened their back and decided, you know, we can't have these women doing this again. And it was a really effective movement. Something like this, I don't know how that would work in the US, but I think we need to look and think about this strategy and how people need to think about how you can withdraw your labor or do things to make your point, because I think it's becoming more and more important, because the government seem to be in many ways a bit, well, definitely authoritarian, but a bit tyrannical in their approach to elect me into power, and then I know what's best and I can do whatever the hell I want. So I think if you're looking up anything, the Iceland women's strike in 1975, very good thing to look up. There's also separatist feminism that emerged in the 1970s with similar premise that women could achieve more without men's influence. So there are different things that you could look into. I think it's just really interesting. But I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I just wanted to have a quick episode to explain the 4B movement in case anyone was concerned that people were just going to get Afro wigs. In the US, there was something real behind it. You can go and look up the 4B movement and look up other movements. And I think, to be fair, the resistance never dies. It just takes on different forms. And I think in an evolving society in the world that we live in now, we really need to think hard about how we want to show up and the things that we're willing to fight for. So that's it. So thank you again for joining me. If you want to catch me, I'm on social media at The Reluctant Accountant. So that's at The Reluctant Accountant for TikTok and Instagram. And if you would like to email me, you can at themisinformationpodcast@gmail.com. That's the misinformationpodcast@gmail.com. But until then, see you in the zeitgeist and keep fighting the good fight.